We have been told the myth for 3,000 years. We've been sold a hero's journey, a sun-drenched epic of a king returning to his throne. We see the marble statues, the noble profile, and we think we know Odysseus. But the original Greek text doesn't describe a hero. It describes a survivor of a 10-year ritual of madness.
Make it stop! Let me go!
It describes a man caught in a cosmic trap, curated by gods who don't just demand worship, they find human suffering beautiful. Forget the adventure. This was a labyrinth of time. Imagine spending a decade in the trenches of Troy, only to be cast into a psychological fever dream where every island is a prison and every help from the gods is a new form of torture. For 20 years, Odysseus wasn't just away. He was being unmade. Today, we strip the gold leaf off the legend. We're going into the shadows of the original text to find the man Hollywood was too afraid to show you. This is the real
gold in here.
Odyssey. Most people believe the Odyssey begins the moment the Trojan horse breached the gates of Troy. That is wrong. While the Odyssey is the sequel to the Iliad, it doesn't pick up the very next second. The Iliad concludes with the funeral of the Trojan prince, Hector. The fall of Troy, the trickery of the wooden horse, and even the death of the legendary Achilles all happen between the two books. Most of those details come from other lost poems or Virgil's Aeneid. We'll talk about the brutal aftermath of Troy and what happened to the men who survived it later in this journey. When our story truly begins, the fires of Troy have been cold for 10 years. The heroes of the war have either returned to their thrones or been buried in the earth. But for one man, the war never ended. Odysseus, the man of 1,000 tricks. While his son, Telemachus, struggles to hold back a den of wolves in their own home, the suitors, Odysseus remains a prisoner of the sea, trapped on the island of Calypso. The war at Troy was over, but the war for his mind had just begun. And its first trap was not set with teeth or claws, but with a flower, the lotus eaters. This isn't a tropical vacation. It's the first recorded instance of psychological horror in literature. After a storm blows his ships off course, right after the war, they land on the island of the lotus eaters. Except there are no monsters that are visible. It's a place of terrifying peace. The inhabitants aren't hostile. They offer Odysseus's scouts the lotus fruit. It's not a poison that kills the body. It's a drug that kills memory and desire. As soon as the men eat it, they forget their wives, their children, and their duty. They lose the pain of home, which is the only thing keeping them human. They don't want to leave. They would rather sit in the dirt and wither away than return to a life of struggle. This is the first time we see the iron will of Odysseus. He didn't reason with them. He didn't offer a speech. He dragged them, wailing and bound, back to the ships and threw them under the rowing benches. He knew that if he stayed for even one more sunset, the king of Ithaca would never exist. again. He would just be another tumble in the weeds, smiling at a son he no longer recognized. Next, we encounter the Cyclops. Don't think of him as a giant. Think of him as a primal force of nature. Polyphemus represents the world before the gods. A world without law, without hospitality, and without mercy. Odysseus and his men land on the island and find a massive cave. Being battle-hardened soldiers who just won a 10-year war, they don't hide. They walk right in, find huge racks of cheese and pens full of lambs, and start helping themselves. His men actually suggest stealing the food and running, but Odysseus, driven by curiosity and a desire for a guest gift, insists they stay and wait for the owner. It is his first major leadership failure. The men hear the thunderous footsteps of a giant returning with his flock. He rolls a stone in front of the cave entrance that is so massive 22 strong four-wheeled wagons could not move it. He doesn't notice the men at first. He goes about his chores. It's only when he lights a fire that the light catches the Greeks shivering in the shadows. When the Cyclops finally speaks, Odysseus tries to use his soldier logic. He tells Polyphemus they are guests under the protection of Zeus. Polyphemus laughs. He tells them he doesn't care about Zeus or the gods because Cyclopes are stronger.
By the laws of the world, you owe us the guest gift. We are under the protection of Zeus Sienios, the god of strangers. He stands behind every guest, and his vengeance is a thunderbolt you do not wish to feel.
Why should the mountain fear the bird that nests upon it? We are the elder blood. We are stronger than your gods, and I am the only god you will meet tonight.
Without another word, he reaches out, grabs two of the soldiers, bashes their heads against the ground like puppies, and eats them raw, bones, guts, and all, right in front of their brothers. Odysseus offers the Cyclops a bowl of unmixed potent wine he brought from the ship. Polyphemus has never tasted anything like it. He drinks 3 massive bowls, getting completely hammered. The Cyclops asks for Odysseus's name so he can give him a guest gift. Odysseus famously says,
"My name is nobody."
To escape being eaten, Odysseus sharpened a massive wooden stake, heated it in a fire, and drive the red-hot stake directly into the Cyclops' single eye. When the other Cyclops arrive and ask who is hurting him, he yells,
Nobody is killing me!
The other giants think he's crazy, or that it's an act of the gods, so they leave. Odysseus almost gets away with it. He and his survivors are on their ship, sailing away. But Odysseus's ego, his soldier's pride, can't handle being nobody. He shouts back to the shore,
If anyone asks who blinded you, tell them it was Odysseus, king of Ithaca!
By giving Polyphemus his real name, Odysseus gives the monster the power to curse him. Polyphemus prayed to his father, Poseidon, to curse the man who took his sight. Poseidon hears the prayer and immediately starts the 10-year storm. He doesn't physically grab the ship. He manipulates the entire ocean to ensure Odysseus is constantly blown off course. Odysseus thought he was sailing toward Ithaca. He didn't realize he was sailing into a god's grudge.
When you finally reach the soil of Ithaca, you will find yourself a stranger in your own house. You will arrive late, alone, and broken, and you will find that the nobody you claim to be is all that remains of the king you were.
By claiming his name, he gave Poseidon a target. The god of the sea didn't need to sink the ship immediately. He just needed to make the world too big for Odysseus to ever cross it. Every wave from that moment on was a hand reaching out to pull him back into the dark. Poseidon is the reason Odysseus lost his ships, his gold, and eventually every single one of his men. He turned Hero's Return into a 20-year haunting. In the Hollywood version of this story, the gods are characters with grudges and personalities. But the dark truth of the original text is far more terrifying. The gods are not your friends. They are the architects of the labyrinth. Take Poseidon. Don't imagine a man with a trident. Imagine the ocean itself as a sentient, vengeful god. He is the unstoppable force, an antagonist you cannot reason with, cannot kill, and cannot escape. Poseidon doesn't just want Odysseus dead. He wants him lost. He represents the crushing reality of a universe that is actively trying to erase you. Every storm isn't a divine tantrum. It's a systematic dismantling of a man's identity. Then they land on the floating island of the King of the Winds. Aeolus lives there with his 6 sons and 6 daughters, who are all married to each other. Yes, that's right. They spend every single day in a perpetual, luxurious feast, while the rest of the world suffers. Aeolus is kind and gives Odysseus a leather bag containing all the storm winds, leaving only the west wind to blow them straight home to Ithaca. They get so close to home, they can see the shore fires of Ithaca. But while Odysseus sleeps, his men, driven by greed, suspect the bag contains gold. They open it, and the resulting hurricane blows them right back to where they started. Aeolus realizes they are cursed by the gods and kicks them off his island. To Aeolus, the hurricane wasn't just weather. It was a divine rejection. They pull their fleet into a narrow harbor. It's a trap. Giant cannibals pelt the ships with massive boulders.
Run to the oars!
11 of Odysseus's 12 ships are smashed, and the men are speared like fish for the giant's dinner. Odysseus's ship is the only one that escapes. This is where the body count gets real for his men. The lone ship reaches Aiaia, home of the witch Circe. She invites his men to a feast, drugs their wine, and turns them into literal swine. She didn't use a sword to defeat his men. She used their own gluttony. While his men were rushing into Circe's halls, Odysseus was stopped by Hermes, the messenger god, who gave him a very specific countermeasure, a mystical herb called moly. Moly is described as having a black root and a milk-white flower. Odysseus enters the palace alone. Circe treats him exactly like the others. Odysseus did drink the wine, but because of the moly, the spell failed. Once Odysseus confronted Circe with the help of the moly herb. He forced her to turn them back.
You have turned my men into swine! Change them back to humans!
Circe had spent centuries turning men into beasts, stripping away their logic and their lives. But for the first time, the predator became the prey, and the witch of Aiaia had met her match. After the men were restored to human form, the horror didn't end. It just changed shape. Circe became Odysseus's lover and a host to the crew. The men spent the next full year on the island, feasting and drinking wine. They weren't under a spell anymore. They were just comfortable. It eventually took the crew members pulling Odysseus aside for him to finally decide to leave.
Captain, are you mad? Have you forgotten your own fatherland? If it is truly your destiny to go home, then it's time to remember Ithaca. I seek safe passage for my men, sorceress.
Safe passage.
Her answer was the ultimate price.
To find the path of the living, you must first sail to the world of the dead.
Circe was more than just his lover. She was the architect who designed his descent into Hades. She knew that to get home, Odysseus first had to become a ghost. And here is the secret the epics try to bury. Odysseus was fighting to return to one son, Telemachus, while unknowingly fathering another who would eventually become his undoing. The hero was building a legacy of blood that would one day return to claim his life. The voyage never ended at Ithaca. It ended with a stingray spear and a son who didn't know his father's face. Most versions of this story say Odysseus visits the Underworld. That makes it sound like a tour. The dark truth is much more visceral. Following the instructions of the witch goddess Circe, he digs a trench and fills it with the blood of sacrificed rams. In the original Greek, this is straight out of a horror sequence. He has to stand there, sword drawn, guarding a pool of blood as the shades, the hollow, twittering spirits of the dead, swarm toward it, desperate for one final taste of life. His primary mission was to summon the ghost of Tiresias, the famous Theban prophet. Tiresias was the only soul in the Underworld who was allowed to keep his mind and memories intact. Odysseus needed a map that didn't exist in the world of the living, a spiritual and physical set of directions to bypass the monsters that still lay ahead. Tiresias gives him the truth of his journey. He tells Odysseus that his men will be tempted to eat the sacred cattle of the sun god, Helios. If they do, everyone dies but Odysseus. The purpose of the trip was to receive this warning, to know that his return home would come at the cost of every life he was responsible for.
You must be wary of the beasts that guard the western horizon. The sun cows. What danger do they pose? Do not eat the sun cows, for their flesh is fire, and their blood is the sun itself.
When Odysseus descends into the land of the dead, the Nicaea, he sees someone he didn't expect, his mother, Anticlea. When he left for the war 10 years earlier, she was alive. He had no idea she had died. She died of a broken heart, simply waiting for him to come home. In the Underworld, he tries to hug her 3 times, but because she is a ghost, his arms pass right through her like a shadow or a dream. But here is the real twist. Odysseus doesn't go there just for wisdom or directions home. He goes because, after years lost in the fog, he needed to realize that he has more in common with the ghosts than the living. This is the moment the heroic age dies. In the Iliad, Achilles chose a short life for eternal fame. But here, in the dark truth of the Odyssey, he reveals the true cost of that choice. When Odysseus tries to comfort him, calling him a lord among the dead, Achilles' response is a chilling rejection of every epic poem ever written. Accurate to the original text, these words strip the teeth out of the myth. Glory is a scam. The hero who died for his name would trade every ounce of his fame just to breathe again. For Odysseus, looking into the hollow eyes of his old comrade, the mission changes. It's no longer about being a hero. It's about not becoming another shivering shadow in the pit.
I would rather be the lowest nameless slave to a landless peasant on the surface of the earth than be the king of every soul who has ever died. There is no glory in the dark, man of many ways. There is only the hunger for the light you are currently wasting. Run home, Odysseus! Run! Before you become a memory like me.
The Underworld wasn't just a pit stop. It was a psychological hardening. He went in a soldier and came out a paranoid, calculating ghost who knew that the only way to win was to trust no one. After he returns from the Underworld and gets final advice from Circe, he runs into the Sirens. In modern myth, we call them mermaids. In the original Greek, they were something far more uncanny. Bird-woman hybrids perched on a mountain of rotting corpses. Their song wasn't a melody, it was a psychological trap. Before they reached the flowery meadow of the Sirens, Odysseus followed Circe's instructions to the letter. He sealed the ears of his men with thick beeswax, plunging them into a world of absolute silence. But Odysseus wanted more. He wanted to hear the song that had lured 1,000 ships to their graves. He ordered his men to bind him to the mast, hand and foot, so he can hear the truth without jumping overboard to his death. He made them swear that no matter how much he begged, no matter how much he screamed, they were to tighten the ropes. He was the only man in history to hear the Sirens and live. But it wasn't a beautiful experience. It was a torture of the mind. They claimed to know everything that happened at Troy and everything that will happen on Earth.
Make it stop! Let me go!
Odysseus survived the giants and the witch, but to get home, he had to look into the eyes of the dead. He had to stand at the mast and scream as the Sirens promised him the secrets of the universe. But his darkest moment wasn't a monster, it was a choice. Immediately after the Sirens, he faces the ultimate no-win scenario. Scylla, a 6-headed mountain monster that eats 6 men, or the Charybdis, a whirlpool that swallows the entire ship. Odysseus chooses Scylla. He deliberately leads his men into a path where he knows 6 of them will be eaten alive, just to save the ship. He doesn't even tell them it's coming. The great king was becoming a cold-blooded survivor. His men are starving and trapped on an island by a storm for a month. While Odysseus is sleeping, they kill and eat the sacred cows. As soon as they set sail, Zeus, at the request of the sun god, Helios, strikes the ship with a massive thunderbolt. The ship is destroyed, and every single man except Odysseus drowns. Odysseus drifts alone for 9 days, nearly being sucked back into the Charybdis whirlpool along the way. On the 10th day, he washes up on the shore of Ogygia, the island of the goddess Calypso. Unlike Circe, who was externally dangerous, Calypso is a loving captor. Calypso is a Titan's daughter. Odysseus is a mortal. He can't leave because she has hidden him from the world. Her name literally means the concealer. Even the other gods almost forgot he was there. Odysseus didn't reach Calypso's island as a king. He reached it as a piece of driftwood. He was stripped of his ships, his men, and his pride. Calypso gave him a paradise that was actually a tomb of silence. For 7 years, the man of 1,000 tricks had no one to trick, no one to lead, and no way home. He was the guest of a goddess, but he was a prisoner of her love. Calypso isn't just a captor. She is a goddess who is deeply in love with him. She offers him the one thing most mortals would die for: immortal youth. She promises that if he stays, he will never age and never die. She gives him a paradise where he never has to struggle again. Odysseus refuses. He spends his days sitting on the rocky shore, staring at the ocean and weeping, longing for a wife who is aging without him and a son he doesn't know. He chooses mortality and grief over a perfect prison. Athena finally convinces Zeus to have mercy. Zeus sends Hermes, the messenger god, to Ogygia with a direct order: release Odysseus. Calypso is furious. She points out the hypocrisy of the male gods taking mortal lovers while she is forced to give hers up, but she cannot disobey Zeus. Calypso doesn't give him a ship. She gives him tools. Odysseus, the man of many ways, has to build his own raft from scratch. But Poseidon wasn't finished with him. Enraged that the other gods went behind his back, he smashes the raft with a massive storm, nearly drowning Odysseus one last time, saved only by a sea nymph, Ino, who gave him a magical veil to keep him from drowning before he finally reaches the land of the Phaeacians. The Phaeacians were master sailors. They took him in, fed him, and listened to him tell his entire journey's story. They were so impressed, they gave him a ship and a literal fortune in gold. They sailed him to Ithaca while he was in a magical sleep, left him on the beach with his treasure, and vanished. When he woke up on Ithaca, Athena met him. She warned him that his palace was full of 108 suitors, arrogant nobles who had moved in, were eating all his food, and were trying to force his wife, Penelope, to marry one of them so they could steal the throne. Athena touched him with her wand. His skin withered, his hair fell out, and his clothes turned into rags. He looked like a 100-year-old beggar. Before he stepped foot in the palace, Odysseus sought out his son, Telemachus. In a secluded hut, Athena stripped away the beggar's rags for a fleeting moment, revealing the father the boy had never known. They collapsed into each other's arms, weeping with a shriek as keen as a golden eagle's, before hardening their hearts for the work ahead. Together, they plotted the trap.
We must hide the weapons of the suitors before they have a chance to arm themselves. The storehouse is empty and secure. We will move their arms there under the cover of this night.
Telemachus would hide the suitors' shields and swords, leaving them defenseless for the moment his father revealed his true face. His wife, Penelope, desperate to stall, set an impossible mission for the suitors. She brought out Odysseus's old hunting bow, a massive weapon that only he could string. To win her hand, a man had to string the bow, pull the heavy string all the way to the notch, shoot a single arrow through the handle holes of 12 axe heads lined up in a row. Every single suitor tried. They even tried rubbing grease on the bow to make it more flexible. Not one of them could even bend it. The beggar asked for a turn. The suitors laughed and mocked him. He took the bow, checked it for worms, and then, effortlessly, strung it. He sat in his chair and fired the arrow straight through all 12 axes. In that moment, Athena stripped away the rags. Odysseus stood tall, his armor gleaming, and shouted,
"The match is over. Now for a target no man has hit before."
He shot the leader of the suitors through the throat while he was drinking wine. Then, he and his son, Telemachus, who had hidden all the suitors' weapons earlier, slaughtered every single one of the 108 men. No mercy was shown. 20 years, 10 years of blood in the mud of Troy, and 10 years of psychological torment on the wine-dark sea. By the time the floor is slick with blood, the message is clear. You can reclaim your throne, but you can never wash off the shadows of the journey. To the modern world, the Odyssey is a foundational text, a 3,000-year-old epic poem attributed to the blind poet Homer. It is the blueprint for every road trip story and every hero's return ever written. But in the Manor, we see it for what it truly is, the world's oldest survivor's log. It is 12,110 lines of psychological endurance. It is the story of Odysseus, a man who survived the 10-year meat grinder of the Trojan War, only to find that the gods had cursed him with another 10 years of isolation. It's not just a poem. It's a study in what happens to a human soul when it is stripped of its home, its men, its family, and its mind. And perhaps, in the end, that is the darkest truth of all. Some voyages don't have an ending. They just have a change of scenery. If you want to see a deep dive into the Iliad, let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.